Okay. Welcome back to solo role manging Shadowdark. Shadowdark Plus, I suppose, with a new Hexcrawl that we're fleshing out as we go. This is all as we go sort of stuff. So, yeah, last time we made our whole starting region, which took a while as we kind of learned the ropes of following Sandbox Generator, which was mostly pretty good. We have a dense area filled with things to do. We have multiple, monster layers and things that can be interacted with. We have some, potentially ongoing plots and a few dungeons if we want to just do that. So I went ahead and did the deity stuff for a priest. And I decided, since it's Shadowdark, I'm just going to follow the Shadowdark deities listed, which are admittedly not... I mean, they cover a pretty good stretch of deities, lawful, neutral, and chaotic. I don't think there's anything like, wow, this is really cool and unique and stuff, but, it's good enough, especially because Shadowdark itself doesn't really, there's no real difference between them in any way. Priest picks a deity that they want to worship. And it's implied here that a priest deity can revoke the gift of spellcasting if the priest commits blasphemous acts. So if you're following, Shun the Vile, it's up to the DM and stuff to figure out what is blasphemous to Shun the Vile. Whereas Saint Taragnus, it's kind of obvious. But I figured since, we'll just go with these. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 deities. I find it quite interesting. There's actually the majority is chaotic. There's 3 chaotic, 2 lawful, 2 neutral. That's kind of surprising. So we may have to throw in an extra lawful one and an extra neutral one to really round it out. It does say 2 of these 9 are lost to ages and stuff, but I guess, though, that's the other lawful and another neutral one. So chaos is winning, which maybe is on brand with the whole theme, but anyways. So I wanted to follow Tales of Argos's sort of template, where you have a handful of tenets that you're kind of encouraged to follow. Which, again, is sort of the implication here, and kind of alluded to, that if you don't follow the tenets, you risk falling out of favor with the deity. So we're just codifying that a little bit more. And then also each deity offers up a couple boons. And I decided to go with a simple system. And I actually am altering Turn Undead. Normally every priest in the game gets Turn Undead. But if you follow the God of Chaos or something, you follow Ramlot, the Pillager, the Barbaric, the Horde, who mostly orcs worship and stuff, it doesn't really make sense to have Turn Undead. So instead, we're changing it to every deity has their own sort of free spell that you get instead of Turn Undead. Saint Taragnus, I gave Turn Undead because that's, sort of the classic righteous justice paladin kind of, yes. So that's still there. If you want Turn Undead and you want to be just a good classic cleric, priest, all that, just pick Saint Taragnus, and that's it. And then you also get Holy Smite. Once per combat, you can add 1d6 damage to an attack against a creature you know to be evil. Pretty classic stuff, pretty simple. Then we have Ged, or Geddy, Geedy, Geed, I don't know. So this is sort of the natural deity, the wilderness deity, the nature domain. So we got Feast of Renewal. After finishing a meal with companions, you and up to 5 allies regain 1d6 health each. I don't know if we really need to specifically limit the number. I think you kind of do, you know, obviously, like, having a lunch with, like, your army of 300 men is a little strange. So I guess you kind of need to, but I would very easily just, whatever the number of players in your group is, just change that. I don't know how to really write that or anything, but that would be the intent. And maybe hirelings. Yeah, I don't know. I guess probably. I guess if you change this to like 8, I think that's, you know, that's a meal, right? And then I went with the Thunderclap spell, which is sort of a D&D, you know, kind of classic spell for druids and stuff. So create a burst of thunderous sound, which can be heard out to a far range. Each creature other than you within close range, that means like melee range, must make a DC 12 con check or take 1d6 damage. So if you're surrounded or something, just thunderclap. And this is instead of Turn Undead. And obviously Turn Undead is really fucking good if you're doing the Barrow Maze. And if I was going to be a priest and I knew I was going into the Barrow Maze, yeah, I'd probably pick Saint Taragnus if I wanted to be a bit more min-maxy. But if you're not encountering undead, like almost ever, then that's shit and useless. Whereas Thunderclap kind of always decent if you're going to be a melee priest, which most likely you are. Madeira the Covenant. This is like the Aeon from Wrath of the Righteous, like all about law and order. Yeah, pure law, sort of. So I gave them Discern Reality. Once per day, describe a possible course of activity to the DM, such as opening a specific door or heading down a specific corridor. The DM will then answer truthfully on whether the activity is likely to have a good or bad outcome for you. If they decide that the chances are about even, you receive an answer of uncertain. So I grabbed that from Weird Wizard, the divination tradition. And then I went with Protection from Evil as your free spell. It's not a spell I ever get particularly excited about. I don't know if it's really good. I don't know. I've never been excited about it ever. But I usually don't play characters that are just like, I'm a good cleric and I buff people and I'm great. I usually prefer wizards, you know, calling down meteors on assholes and stuff. Ord. So this is sort of the wisdom god, the Woden kind of figure, all about learning and maintaining knowledge and things like that. So Keeper of Secrets, use wisdom instead of intelligence when trying to recall information. It's kind of a vague concept, you know, because there aren't really any skills here, so it's kind of like anytime, you know, a DM would say, okay, you know, roll intelligence, see if you know anything about that, or blah, blah, blah. Just use wisdom instead. And then this one, probably a little OP. Probably needs to be nerfed. I sort of adapted this from a Tales of Argosa spell. The Divine Armament spell. You conjure a spectral melee weapon no larger than a polearm in your hand, or enchant an existing non-magical weapon that you touch. You may give the weapon to another person, and anyone wielding it counts as proficient. That's the one that I'm really iffy about. I'm not quite sure if that's OP or not. Last 2d6 rounds has +1 to attack and damage rolls. Only one of these weapons can exist at a time. I don't know, because I believe so. Hold on. Yeah, so there is Holy Weapon, right? Which is a spell in the core rulebook that a priest can get at level 1. And I could just say you get Holy Weapon, and it doesn't count towards your number of spells. And this is 5 rounds. One weapon you touch becomes magical and has +1 to attack and damage rolls for the duration. This is strictly just, like, better. It lasts 2d6 rounds. It can conjure it out of thin air, so it doesn't have to actually exist beforehand. And anyone wielding it counts as proficient. Which means that, yes, you could conjure a greatsword that has +1 to attack and damage rolls, and you could give it to your wizard. Now, at a certain point, your wizard isn't going to really want to wade into melee combat with a greatsword. So I think there is like an inherent kind of balance to it, somewhat. I mean, honestly, what is the most likely use case of this? Probably similar to Holy Weapon. Or, you know, it allows the priest himself to maybe conjure up something that he wouldn't normally be able to use. But there is always the risk of failure. So you might not be able to cast this, and it is an action, and, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think it needs playtesting. That's what it needs. It's sort of hard to say. Then we have Memnon. So this is just the pure chaos. Embrace change, no matter how destructive. Challenge authority. Tear down the old way to make way for the new. And what do you expect? If you're a priest and you're picking a chaos deity, I imagine you like chaos. You get chaos surge once per combat whenever you take damage. Well, when you take damage. You may roll 1d6. On a 6, you heal for that amount. Which would be 6. I mean, I don't know why we... On any other result, deal the rolled amount as fire damage to all creatures within close range. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a little chaotic, but I think it's not bad. And then Erosion spell. So this was from Novice Magic that I just yoinked. Sort of little emblematic of chaos. Allows you to weaken a structural stability of an object. It can be a support beam inside a building, a piece of cloth, a weapon, or virtually any kind of non-living material you can imagine. It can affect up to 2 gear slots worth of materials. The object is weakened, in most cases unusable until repaired. However, heavy load-bearing objects may collapse after being weakened. You can also cast it and hold it in your hand for up to 3 rounds until discharged. It's a bit wordy. And yeah, I mean, this means that you kind of have to incorporate this Novice Magic document. But that's Shadowdark Plus, you know. Ramlot. This is the war god, the blood god. Live boldly or not at all. Only the strong deserve to survive. Blah, blah, blah. So, mostly adapted this from the Iron God from Tales of Argosa. So you get trained for war. You may use all melee weapons or heavy armor. Choose one. And Bloodlust. For 5 rounds, you roll damage dice with melee weapons with advantage. Pretty simple. And lastly, Shun the Vile. So this is sort of the dark, trickery, mystery, Loki, you know, of the shadows sort of thing. So we got Dark Insight, roll with advantage on wisdom rolls to resist fear or illusions, and the Obfuscation spell, which allows you to have advantage on stealth checks for 5 rounds. I think it's 5 rounds. 4 rounds. Okay, 4 rounds. Yeah. Pretty simple, I think. Obviously very expandable if we want to add other deities or change some of these. And yeah, I probably do want to add another lawful one and another neutral one, but I kind of have to think of what sort of domains we're missing here. Something devoted to death, I think. A neutral deity devoted to death would probably be pretty appropriate. Yeah. Okay. And then I also copy-pasted all the trauma tables here into this notepad. I didn't alter these at all, so some of these are going to have to be rewritten slightly. A lot of them mention, like, luck con saves. We're going to have to just change that to a DC 12 or something con check. It's pretty simple. And then the other thought that I had was about armor. you know, we're expanding the armor selection by quite a bit, and so I think it's probably for the best to then categorize it as light armor, medium armor, heavy armor. So then, you know, because right now a priest says, or a thief says leather armor and mithril chainmail. So I think you probably want to just change that to light armor. You know, most of these are, although, oh fuck, priest actually says they can wear all armor. Because the priest here is kind of also meant to represent a paladin. I don't know if I want to nerf priests down to medium armor unless they worship a specific deity. But maybe I do. Maybe I do. I mean, I don't think it's common for clerics to be able to wear that kind of shit. Because obviously, Tales of Argosa, the cultists cannot wear medium armor. Let me go. Just gonna look real quick at the OSC cleric, the BX cleric. Yeah, any armor. So, oh boy. And then if I were to go and look at the 5th edition D&D cleric, is that evolved? Is that changed? Yeah, medium armor. So over time, clerics have become slightly less armored. I think it's kind of fair to bump them down to medium armor, to be honest. And you do have the option, if you really want to be big tanky boy, you could pick the certain deity and pick heavy armor, and there you go. I don't know if priests were really in need of a nerf of any kind in relation to that. But especially with, I mean, okay, so how would we categorize this as what's heavy armor? Well, Axe is pretty clear about it. If we conjoin very light and light into one light category, that includes anything from padded and hide armor to leather armor or arena armor, and then ring mail up through like chainmail, ring, scale, chain, that's all medium. And then heavy is going to be banded plate, lamellar plate, you know. So pretty much light armor is 1 or 2, or, you know, like 11 or 12 AC. Medium is 13, 14 AC. Heavy is 15, 16 AC. So you're not, like, massively missing out by being... Because I remember the encumbrance rules are pretty painful now that I've altered. So I don't think many characters are going to want to go up to heavy armor and really be that extra tanky, sacrificing most of their gear slots. So, yeah, we will nerf priests. Okay, are we ready to start? I feel like I keep getting distracted by customizing things and world building things and so on and so forth. So let's start. So we go back to the village after our harrowing adventure, and we rest for the day, and we, you know, we spend a little bit of time training. You know, now that we've survived dangers and we know what it's like, we've been forged in the fires, so we train up, we study up and all that, and that's how you level up to level 1. But we know that we're done, you know, we're done with farming. We're done with this life of peasantry and shit. So we want to take our treasures to the big city, which isn't really a big city, but the bigger city, and sell them off and get properly equipped and stuff. Maybe get horses, who knows, and continue our adventuring as a group. So, yeah, and we head out at some point in the near future from Valbrook. And we're gonna go along the grassland and over here to Baileythorpe. So we do want to do a random encounter check here. Now, Shadowdark doesn't really I mean, I guess this whole region is unsafe, right? If you're not within a settlement, it's pretty unsafe. I mean, there's frogmen around, there's gnolls around, there's plenty of hostile creatures within the area. This is a generally unsafe region and setting, really. You'd have to go kind of really to the big civilized parts of the world. And maybe there it's not unsafe. It's relatively safe. So for us, you know, if we're gonna do the Shadowdark Hexcrawl rules, we can travel 24 miles a day. This is a 2-mile hex. Honestly, I'd probably just say 1 random encounter roll. So we roll a d6, and if we roll a 1 while passing over to Baileythorpe, then there's a random encounter. We did not, so relatively okay. Not too iffy when you have 2-mile hexes. Random encounters aren't going to pop up that often. I don't know if Sandbox Generator had thoughts on the matter. Like, thought I had to say, yeah, here. Yeah, but it doesn't really say. This isn't a hex crawl, like how to run a hex crawl. This is just how to generate a hex crawl. So there isn't really rules here for when to roll or how often to roll or how common random encounters should be. But yeah, needless to say, 2-mile hexes, you're probably not doing more than 1 roll per hex. And even that is... Yeah, I mean, I would just do that. Anything more than that is kind of ridiculous. Alright, so we make it to Baileythorpe. And it is a rather grim place. Very somber. There's kind of a gray pallor cast over the entire area. In general, you know, the place is not like really joyous, colorful realm filled with mirth. But especially recently, things have been a little tricky because they've had like zombies rising out of their central graveyard. The graveyard is very important to them, I guess. They have a big emphasis on death here and the passing of life to the next realm and blah blah blah. So undeath is pretty concerning to them, for sure. Even more so than it would be to any other town. So not a happy time to be visiting Baileythorpe. And I think we kind of quickly hear the gist of the situation here, that undead are occasionally rising. Now, it's not like an every night thing or anything like that. It's maybe like a once a week thing. And they're not like passing on a zombie plague or anything like that. But they are getting, you know, a few people every time it happens, and then the guards put them down, and then they burn the corpses and stuff. And maybe eventually the graveyard will run out of corpses, but obviously they have quite a few corpses in their big graveyard. So it's not good, and you know, obviously the authorities are not really sure what to do about it. Rather than digging up all the corpses themselves and burning them all right now. But that is a big move for a settlement that really kind of celebrates the graveyard and honors death like that. So it's just kind of distressing all around. And obviously, there's plenty of talk of like a necromancer, because it's either that, I mean, plenty of people probably think that it's like some sort of divine punishment that they're experiencing, and you know, they're trying to figure out who or what is responsible for the gods looking upon them this way. This is where I would mention, if I had my death-related deity, it's probably what they mostly worship here, that they've upset him in some way and try to appease him and stuff. But yeah, you know, plenty of other people think that it's just a necromancer that's trying to devastate and take over the town or something, which is the case. Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of a bit above our pay grade. I would say, you know, a couple of our characters, Malcor and Godfrey, are probably pretty interested in assisting, but taking on a necromancer and his undead army that's trying to take over the town is a little iffy. We're not so sure about that, and we're just passing through for the moment. But hopefully, you know, hopefully you all take care of that. Best of luck to you with your undead problem. So we want to sell treasure. So, again, like, we're kind of going back and forth about how much gold you should be getting for the treasure values that we assign from modules and from dungeons and stuff like that. If I say, yeah, it's worth 10 gold, does that mean you get 10 gold for it? And you just click sell and boom, boom, done, all gold values exactly as promised? Or should there be, or should that be like the perfect idealized value that you're never actually going to get because because if it's worth, okay, here's the argument of why it's not like an absolute value, because why would anyone buy it for that value? Yeah, maybe like a work of art or something that they want to keep for themselves and they value because of its just like aesthetic value or something like that. Maybe, but like a copper brazier or something. Most merchants that are going to be buying this are hoping to sell it or otherwise convert it into a more liquid form of cash for themselves. And they're trying to make a profit off of this stuff. And, you know, it's like a pawn shop. It's like a pawn shop. So if they're making more money off of it, then obviously the value that we have listed is not the true value. Or it's not necessarily what you could get for it. And if they can resell it, say they can take that copper brazier and sell it for 12 gold instead of 10, and they make a 2 gold profit, then what is to stop characters from cutting out the middleman and also getting 12 gold for it? You know, if they really wanted to. If they could find whoever this guy is selling it to and say, hey, you're 12 gold, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously this is not the max possible value, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. So that's why I think it's better to go with, okay, this is the max possible value that anyone could theoretically get for it. In like a perfect situation to the perfect buyer and everything, that's what you could get. But obviously, if you're just dumping this all off at a merchant, you're not getting that value because he's trying to get that value to whoever he sells it to. So you're going to get a lower amount. The question then is, how much lower? 10%, I think, was a reasonable thing. He's not probably going to get 10% profit off of it. He might get 6% profit, and maybe he's happy with that. Because, you know, you guys are usually selling in bulk, and you might come back and sell more. He's not going to, you know, rip you off. Also, you're carrying weapons, and you're potentially really dangerous. So 10%, I think, is the general that I would go with. And going forward, when I DM and stuff, that's probably what I'm going to explain to players. It's like, okay, this is the max possible value. If you really want to devote a lot of time and effort, maybe you could get pretty close to that. But if you just want to sell the merchant and move on, it's going to be 10% less. So we're going to sell the copper brazier to a guy in town for 9 gold and the silver soldier for 18 gold, which puts us at 27 gold. And I can't click sell because that'll give us the full value. And yeah, I'm sure plenty of DMs just give you the full value and don't even think about it, but I don't know. I thought about it. So then we have the small crystals we picked up. That's a total of 10. So we're going to get another 9 out of that, which bumps us up to 36. Then we have the crystal globe. That's a big one. That's a big item. But I think it's possible to move it. It is really beautiful, so it's kind of a work of art. So someone will buy it. And that's going to be 180 plus 18 is 198 for Junor's 2 things. We're rolling in dough, baby. We got the half of the bronze rod. You know, we don't know anything about the quest or anything, so I mean, I guess we could tell that there's only half of a rod, but we couldn't find the other half, so we assume it's just lost to time. And that's going to be 10%, so that's 135 gold. And we have 2 more silver soldiers, 18 each for 36 gold. All right, now that means that all told, our haul. Well, let's see. That was it was 150. Yeah, so it's like 300. I mean, what? It wasn't even 500 gold, like, of perfect value that we pulled out of there. So if we were level 1 and we went and did that dungeon, we all survived and we made it out of there with all that treasure and we were doing gold as XP, that would be like 500 XP divided among our 4 characters. So 125 XP each. And if I was using fighter progression, that's 125 out of 2,000 to get to level 2. So it sounds like a lot of gold, but you have to keep in mind that in old school D&D, at level 2, on average, you know, the party will have pulled in, like, I mean, somewhat close to 8,000 gold. So we definitely do not have numbers close to that. So it was a nice haul at level 0 going into level 1 for sure. Because, you know, we do have equipment now. And had we started at level 1, we would have started with, on average, 35 gold each. So 140 total. And then we would have had to buy some equipment as well. So, yeah, we're definitely ahead of the curve at level 1 because of that. But that's one of the nice things about doing the funnel or the gauntlet, is that you get to kind of earn your character. You get a little more familiar with your character. You learn the ropes of the system, and you get some extra gold and stuff. So it's not bad if you have a group that is kind of okay with chewing through a few characters along the way. Which, I mean, they should be. Alright, so what do we want to spend our gold on? Well, let's think. Oscar doesn't have any. Oh, we are also selling that scale armor, which is worth double. So that's worth 60. So 56 more gold because of that. It's like jewel encrusted scale armor. And technically we could sell all the other scale armors and buy regular ones for a profit. But I think we kind of feel cool wearing jewel encrusted scale armor, so we'll keep it. But yeah, another 56 is 92 gold there. Okay. Oscar doesn't really have anything. He can only use daggers and staves. That's it. So I suppose we will buy a staff for him. Which is 5 silver. Alright. Other equipment. Right, we want a shield for Godfrey. He can use that. So I think that's 10 gold. Yep, 10 gold. So we'll deduct that. And we have to alter this so that it's 1 AC, not 2. That's the new rule. He's still at 14 AC. I mean, he's pretty good. Oh yeah, and we were gonna buy him a crossbow, right? Because he can use that. Yes, he can use a crossbow. So, honestly, probably ditch the mace. It's 5 gold. We go for half that. 2 gold and 5 silver. And we'll sell the mace off. Keep the dagger because it's a finesse weapon. Technically, short swords are not finesse weapons, even though they really should be. Scimitars are fucking finesse weapons. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, I guess that's the only difference. Look at this. For 1 gold extra, you get the finesse. And it's like, why? If that's the only difference, just make the short sword a finesse weapon like, I don't know, every other game. I mean, obviously, it's a newer concept. I don't think. Yeah, I mean, there are no dex weapons in old school D&D. That was a newer concept. The only dex weapons were, missile weapons. So no matter what, if you were in melee, you were using strength. So having a 1d6 finesse weapon does make dex fighters even fucking better. And they're already, like, technically, like, the best concept anyways. So having a 1d6 finesse weapon, a little busted. Which is perhaps why it's not in the core rulebook. Perhaps that was a conscious decision, a compromise somewhat with new school and old school. Because, yeah, by default, dagger is the only option. Where is the scimitar from? Cursed Scroll. Okay, that is an official supplement. So, regardless of what you feel about their original design intent, they did feel that it was okay to put it in one of the official supplements. And depending on the table, I mean, obviously some DMs ban any supplements of any kind forever and only core rulebook and what they approve. But usually, official supplements are often on the table to be allowed. It's when you get into, like, third-party homebrew stuff that it's really, like, I don't know. For me, it's like, okay, if you're taking something from an official supplement, I know that that's part of the design intent of the system. And it's like, okay, I don't really need to, like, clear it or, like, okay it. Like, it's pretty much fine. But if you're drawing from something third-party, like the Player's Companion or Unnatural Selection or something, it's probably fine. I'm pretty flexible, but I'm going to have to look at it. But, yeah, so the scimitar is a 1d6 finesse weapon. So, despite what I said, I mean, it still seems okay to be good. So, we could buy a scimitar. For Godfrey instead of a dagger if we wanted to upgrade him. But really, most of the time, he's going to be using the crossbow. So we just want to buy that. And we want to buy bolts. So that's going to be, what, like a gold for the bolts? Yep. And the crossbow is 8 gold. So 9 more down. But there you go. Crossbow equipped. Plus 3. 1d6 damage. Some people have brought up, why isn't there like a heavy crossbow? Like a big-ass crossbow. Because, I mean, historically, crossbow at close range is going to do as much, if not more, damage to somebody than, like, a longbow. So why is there not a D8 crossbow? And really, the reason has nothing to do with historical accuracy or realism or anything like that. It's just a game balance thing. And that's so that fighters remain the king of all combat ability. So really, only they can use a longbow of the core 4 classes. Because if clerics, could use longbows, it would be even... They'd be infringing on the fighter's position as the best at combat of all forms. But that's pretty good, I think. Malcor is also going to want a shield, so let's add that. And again, edit to be 1 AC. That's 10 gold. And then... I don't usually track it because I'm really bad. I'm really just bad at doing this. And I'm especially bad when I'm actually DMing, and I don't often think of it. But I really... Well, I DM for my family, and I know that they don't give a shit about any of this sort of realism or simulationism or anything like that. And they don't want to track arrows. They certainly don't want to track rations or anything. If I was DMing for a more serious group that actually got into it all and cared about like resource management a little bit, then yeah, I'd have to track ration usage. So I think for our purposes, let's buy rations. So at least we have it. And that's 5 silver for 3 days. Which isn't much, but something. Otherwise, equipment, I feel like we're mostly pretty good on. It's, I guess, a question of if anybody wants to go with a heavier armor, even. But Junor can barely carry anything as it is. Because that great axe is 2, the scale armor is 3, the helmet is 1. He could throw away the helmet and go for 1 step up from scale armor, which would be chainmail. So then he'd still have 2 empty slots. His AC would be 16 instead of 15, but he wouldn't be able to negate a crit. So that's sort of the trade-off there. And he likes his bejeweled armor, so maybe we'll just keep it as is. Yeah, honestly, with like that armor change, making a lot more slots, that's where you're gonna start wanting like a pack mule or something. Although we do have our storage box from Godfrey, so theoretically we can always access that until he fails the spell roll, and then it's just like, fuck, we can't access any of our shit until tomorrow. But that would be a good place I don't think we want to store rations or anything, because we don't want to go hungry. But a lot of these, like, utility things, I think we can kind of just shove away. And it would be nice to just have a box full of anything that we might need. That's pretty handy. So, let me roll storage real quick. I have to edit it to be priest. Priest. Or failure. Okay. I do agree that it failed, but the number wasn't quite correct. It should be 1 plus 1. Shouldn't it? Hold on, is it? The 1... Oh no, you don't include your level. So never mind, it was just plus 1. And he didn't take any bonus to spellcasting or anything? No, he took plus 1 to ranged attacks. Great. Also, we need to pick a deity for Godfrey. Obviously, lean towards something lawful. We could just pick Saint Taragnus. I mean, it's fine enough. Alright, we'll pick Ord. That way we can kind of maybe test this Divine Armament spell. So we don't get Turn Undead. We can delete that. We can create a new item for a spell. Divine Armament. Priest. Duration. Rounds. 2d6. Range. Touch, I guess. There you go. Done. Done and done. Spell. Okay. Alright, so we failed our fucking storage box for the day. So I guess we'll rethink this plan tomorrow. But we're not done adventuring for the day, so we'll just have to deal with that. I don't know. I mean, there's probably things I'm just missing. Let me just make sure we have kind of a lot of useful stuff. Okay, what we don't have is torches. So we have to figure out a torch person, which I guess the best bet is Oscar. He's kind of in the back of marching order, so it's not great. But I guess he could be somewhat in the middle of marching order. It's fine. But yeah, he's the best bet. So, torch. Or should I just buy a lantern? Lanterns are so much better. We got a lot of oil flasks, so we're just gonna buy a lantern for 5 gold. We can afford that shit. And we have 2 oil flasks. So we'll pop those over. He's at 9 out of 10 slots now. He doesn't really need the crowbar, though. Okay. I think that's fine. Should we have another oil flask? Backup oil flask. I mean, this is our storage chest is going to have like 10 of them. You know, because we can store an infinite amount in there as long as it fits into the chest. So I guess it doesn't really matter. Other things, mostly we're pretty good. Oh, we do need flint and steel as well, and we're all gonna need backpacks. So the flint and steel is 5 silver. Yep. And then everyone needs a backpack, otherwise you can't actually carry this shit. And that costs 2 gold for everybody, so we'll just deduct 8 here. Bada bing, bada boom. Alright, I mean, we're pretty loaded up with shit. As in, we can't carry that much treasure out. But we were going to introduce a possible encumbrance rule to Shadowdark, where you can carry additional slots, I think up to, like, your strength mod. Yeah, but then you have disadvantage on, like, all physical activities. So, you know, our hefty character is going to carry an extra 2 slots over. And that's about it. And Oscar, yeah, negative strength mod, I suppose, is not calculated. We're not going that far off the rules. But okay, so we're good. We depart the shops, ready for war. And we're going to do an adventure. And I think what I wanted to do first was the Tomb of the Hunters, because I know it's a very small dungeon. So we heard a rumor, something about it. Honestly, I don't know anything about it. Does it have like a little tiny bit of backstory or something? Not really. We've just heard about a dangerous cave nearby that might have some treasure in it. There's been talk about an old tomb that got opened up. Dangerous, though. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So we're going to trek in. So, as we draw near to the... Well, I suppose we should roll for a random encounter in the area, because we're entering a new hex. And this is kind of in the swamp. So we're going to roll a d6. And we got a 5 again, so no random encounter. We do eventually find it. Or do we? This is something you have to find, right? That's kind of... I think I was going to do searching rules from Axe. Was it Axe? I think it was. Let me just look here real quick. Wilderness Expeditions. And now we have to wait for this to load. I think I remember doing like a D6 every hour. And on a 1, you got a random encounter. On a 6, you found what you were looking for. I think that was the Axe searching rules. Searching the wild. Trigger 1 random encounter roll per hour while searching, which the judge will resolve based on the random encounter table. So it's not technically a D6 and you succeed on a 6. I think that's what I just did to make it simple, because ordinarily based on your expedition movement, and I think we were looking at... Yeah, I think in a perfect case, you have 24 miles expedition movement, but we were not. We were slow, as most groups are going to be. So it was 12 to 23, and then you succeed on a 17 plus roll. But then it says if you're searching for a specific point of interest, you get a -4 penalty on the throw. Which means that a group with this level of movement speed searching for a specific point of interest will never find it. which seems kind of wild. Just like you could literally spend a year and you'll just never find it. This is a 2-mile fucking hex. This is based on a 6-mile hex. So I think we can be a bit more generous here. And that's why I think just the D6 rule. You basically have equal odds of finding it versus finding a random encounter. And it's just, you know, how many hours are going to go by before you get a 1 or a 6 or something. I think it's fair. Because Shadowdark just doesn't have rules for that, really. Yeah. So, you know, it takes us like a couple hours to get out to the marsh. I mean, what is the travel time? 6-mile hex. A 6-mile hex, 4 hours, according to Shadowdark. Which is slow. I mean, again, the normal, like, OSR sort of travel speed is 24 miles per day. This is half that. But if we go with half that, so the 12 miles in 8 hours, and we want to do how long it takes, divide that by 6, basically. I think we were going to change it to 3 miles, weren't we? Which is a lot simpler. Because then it's just 2 hours to go hex to hex. That is a lot easier. So let's just make them 3-mile hexes. And it takes us 2 hours to get out to the swampy area where we heard that this tomb is located. And now we're going to start searching. So basically just however many hours. Let's say it's... well, let's see. We spent 4 hours... Yeah, we spent 4 hours to go from Valbrook to Baileythorpe. Let's say we set out at 8 a.m. So it was noon when we got to town. We had lunch or something. We did some shopping, as you do. So maybe it was 2 and we set out. We spent another 2 hours. So now it's 4. Getting a little late in the day to do this, but we'll search for a couple hours at least. Then we might head back to Baileythorpe for the evening. So first hour, 4 to 5, we get a random encounter. Great. Now, we are technically adjacent to the Frogmen. So if we get a faction roll on our this table, if we get the faction roll 4 to 6, that's going to be Frogmen. Otherwise, you know, we'll see. So we're rolling 2d6 on this table. We got a 6. So it is Frogmen. How many Frogmen? Well, we have to go to the... we were looking at Lizard Man. Right, we were looking at Wizard Man. Lizard Man. Let me find the Lizard Man. $6d6. Right, so we multiplied that by 5 for 30d6, and that's how we got 106 frogmen. Yeah, I think that's correct. Yes. So, 66 is how many frogmen are we encounter on patrol. 20 of them. Okay. And again, that's like BXD&D rules and stuff. That's not the sandbox generator rules where we're meant to determine how many percentage-wise are in the lair and not. But I mean, it's sort of the same. Like, it's either way to do it is fine. So 20 are out there, and then I think we have to roll like a d8, and if we roll an 8, that means that technically like 20 more are out. I don't remember. No, I mean, we can just whatever. 20 frogmen. We can't beat 20 frogmen. I mean, there's no way that's gonna happen. But there's also rules for encounter distance, and I think I want to say Shadowdark had rules for that for a dungeon in the random encounter section. But that was in a dungeon. That was not set for overland travel. Because it just doesn't make any sense for something to start close to you. Unless you change the meaning of those words in relation to overland travel versus dungeons. And close is like within 50 feet. And far is within like 2,000 feet or, you know, something. When in doubt, if you really want to be more accurate, of course, there's Axe, which will have all the information for you. And you can go off of their chart for wilderness encounter distance. I don't know where that is exactly. Let's see. I don't know if that's in the DM book or not. There it is. Wilderness encounter distance table. We're in the swamp, marshy. So it's going to be 3d6 times 15 feet. But that's the max encounter distance. So I don't know if you're meant to... Judge will roll on the wilderness encounter distance able to randomly... Okay, yeah. Man. The encounter will then occur at either the max encounter distance or the max visibility distance, whichever is less. So you gotta also figure out the visibility distance as noted under visibility in the wild, because time of day matters and the size of the formation matters. If there's 10 to 30 of them, it increases visibility distance by plus 50%. Yeah, Axe obviously takes it pretty far. We know that. And first edition AD&D took it a lot farther than BX D&D did. So this was, you know, if you really care about all this sort of stuff. All right, so let's roll 3d6 times 15 feet. Max roll. We maxed it out. Very fucking far. That's the max encounter distance. I don't even know what that number is. 18 times 15? You think I can just do math? That's 300 minus 30, so 270 feet. 270 feet is pretty far. It's pretty far, but it's not an absurd amount. It's not like being on the grassland in 1,800 feet or something. So then you'd have to calculate, if you really wanted to, the max visibility distance, which is off of this table here. So it's daylight. So your max in perfect conditions is 3 miles. Fire. Oh, yeah, if you see fire. Feature perceived. Oh, yeah, feature perceived in the daylight. There's a party gang. Okay, so 900 feet then during daylight is the max that you could see them from. But if they're bigger or smaller creatures, that can affect it. If there's elevation, that could matter. But that really only matters for spotting terrain or fire, not necessarily creatures. Then dense terrain can reduce visibility distance. So, scrubby swamp reduced by 33%, forested swamp 50%. But I think no matter what, none of this is going to be lower than the max terrain, the max encounter distance that we rolled of 270. So I think it's at 270. And this is all complicated, yes, but it's realistic. Like, there's little reason that we would suddenly just pop up on, you know, a group of 20 frogmen. Like, it just wouldn't really happen unless the DM is just like, yeah, they've been sitting here waiting in ambush or something. Which you could do. I mean, if you want to ignore this and just decide whatever the fuck you want, go ahead. This whole thing is just because they like realism. They like simulating the world in a realistic way without the DM just being like, yeah, this happens. You know. Here, the DM can show all his math, you know. If people are really, like, calling bullshit, it's like, well, there's this and this factor and this factor, and that's how it works. Rather than just, yeah, frogmen show up and they're on top of you and you ambush you. Which I am guilty of doing, for sure. Just to, like, make it exciting. But that's not really the purpose. Again, the purpose, as I see it, of an OSR game is to just simulate a realistic fantasy universe and let players do what they may. So, in this case, yes, we would see off in the distance of the swamp a pack of 20 frogmen 200 plus feet away from us. And they're not being especially quiet because this is kind of their swamp. They sort of own the swamp. And so the question then is, do they see us? In which case, I guess you'd have to roll... Well, I guess it's sort of like, are we that much harder to spot because there's a small group of us? I mean, a humanoid group, 1 to 9 people is 600 feet max. Even if we chop that in half at 300. We didn't really roll for weather or anything, so we don't know the status of that. But honestly, I think it's quite possible they spot us as well. So the question, I guess... The question, I suppose, is like, do they see us? Do we actually see them before they see us? You know, do we get that element of like, okay, they haven't noticed you yet, what do you do? You know, does that opportunity arise for the players? I think in general it's just nicer to do it that way. But again, I tend to be a Care Bear DM, and it's like, okay, we want, you know, the players to have more agency. So I don't think there's anything wrong with just saying, okay, you see this pack of 20 frogmen, they haven't noticed you yet, what do you do? And then it gives them an opportunity to do something that might avoid detection and might allow them to just avoid the encounter or something. Rather than reducing it to just like a dice roll or something, where they don't really have any agency, and the DM could just roll a die and it's like, all right, well, they see you, so that's it. That's how I tend to lead in a wilderness encounter like this, since we're the smaller party by far. There's only 4 of us, and there's 20 of them hopping around and making noise 270 feet away. But you know, in a dungeon, it's a lot different. It's a lot different scale and everything. It's 2 very different situations. Yeah, so here, evasion. You can't evade in a dungeon like at all, but you can possibly evade in a wilderness encounter. And technically, I should be rolling then for surprise to see if they can. But assuming neither of us have foreknowledge and there's line of sight on both, then we both roll surprise, and if we did not end up surprised, then adventurers can evade. So technically, yeah, Axe wants you to resolve it as just a die roll. So we'd roll a d6 for each side, and if you roll 1 or 2, you're surprised. That side is surprised. So in our case, the frogmen would not be surprised, and our heroes would be surprised. In which case, there's no evasion. You know, it's just, yep, we didn't. They notice us, and we notice them after they notice us, and blah blah blah. If you want to resolve it as a dice roll instead of giving the players real agency over the situation, that's how Axe kind of, I think, is meant to work. And then, assuming you weren't surprised, and they weren't surprised, you can then try and evade, in which case it's a proficiency throw, so it's a dice roll, depending on your party size. So for us, that'd be 6 or less. And then the terrain, which is marshy swamp. So you'd have to roll 9 or higher, which is decently likely. And then you just evade. You know, the encounter is over and you run off and blah, blah, blah. But, and then you got to do all this aftermath stuff. Determine on the wilderness encounter distance table, determine how far they had to travel to escape. Then roll d12, determine the clock direction of their movement. If they split up, then it's 2 different directions, blah, blah, blah. You know, you can plot their movement on the map. They might evade straight into a monster lair or point of interest. Or the judge might make an additional encounter throw instead. And then, once they come to a halt, they must immediately make a navigation throw at -4 to see if it's gotten lost. I mean, it's all pretty realistic, right? I can't fault any of it. It's just like, yeah, you're really getting away from what Shadowdark is meant to be, which is pretty simple. And even doing that encounter distance stuff is sort of just like, yeah, kind of against the whole design ethos. So obviously we're way overthinking this, way overcomplicating it, blah, blah, blah. And really, if you wanted to simplify, is just, you could have just rolled the number in the group, in the patrol, or you just have a number ready, you know, based on the percentage of the max number. So it's okay, whatever. We have a number ready. Whenever they encounter patrol, if they do, this is the amount. And then just say, okay, 200 feet away, because you're outdoors, whatever. You notice this size patrol, and they haven't noticed you yet. What do you do? And that's basically it, you know? And it doesn't always have to be that case if they encounter a big patrol. I mean, it could be a worse situation for the players if you wanted it to be. You could force their hand a little bit. But that's the thing. Like, that's the thing with Shadowdark, is that unless you have explicit rules for so many things, a lot of it is just going to be whatever the DM feels. And that's kind of like what every RPG sort of is. It's just like a level of complexity and specific rules that the DM is comfortable with. Some DMs want rules for everything. Every last thing possible. They just want a rule so it's clear and concise. And then other DMs want very, very little rules because they don't want anything to impugn on their ability to improvise. So, you know, obviously Shadowdark leans towards the more free-form approach, and that's why it's popular. So I don't really want to bog it down too much by just keep looking at Axe and be like, well, okay, this is how the Axe does it, and blah, blah, blah. I do want to run Shadowdark as a pretty easy, fluid system. So let's just keep it simple, and we'll say a couple 100 feet away, frogmen, 20 of them. They're roaming around looking for food. And I think, obviously, all of us are from that village of Valbrook. We know about the frogmen. And I think what we would establish is that we don't have an alliance or anything with them. We have never really communicated. We just know that they exist out in the swamp, and they know that the humans exist. And generally the advice given to all children growing up in Valbrook is just don't go into the swamp. You know, the frogmen leave us alone, we leave them alone. That's their swamp, so on and so forth. So probably there has been stories of frogmen just attacking people that didn't listen to that advice and went out into the swamp to do whatever. So it's not like they're the frogmen are very civilized and, you know, all that sort of stuff, lawful. But generally, you know, we can't wipe out the frogmen, and they don't want to wipe us out for the moment, so leave it as is. So we don't really want to mess with this pack of 20 frogmen. Even if we did like, yeah, let's kill frogmen, this is gonna be great. We do not have the means to do so. I don't have any sort of large scale options for dealing with 20 frogmen. We need to get some mercenaries or something if we really wanted to wipe out the frogmen menace. So honestly, I think we just try and stay out of sight and avoid being noticed. And you could make this a dice roll if you wanted to keep it spicy and have there be a chance the frogmen notice us. But honestly, due to the terrain and everything and the swamp and the distance, it's just like, yeah, if we just stay out of sight and let them pass, they'll pass. And so it's not so much as an encounter as it is something that like potentially informs the player and keeps them on their toes a little bit. It's like, okay, there's frogmen here. This is frogmen territory. They're roaming around in big patrols. You know, we need to be a little careful. Because yes, next time maybe I do decide that they're a little closer than that, or that they notice the players or something like that. And the more time you spend wandering around the swamp, the more likely it is that eventually you're going to have an encounter with those frogmen. So let this just serve as a warning. But warning or not, we're going to soldier on. So that was our first hour, and we're going to roll for the second hour now. 6, we found it. Excellent. Well, that worked out really well. So we found the Tomb of the Hunters. And so we find a steep, gritty incline descending into the red rock cave. Daylight filters into the cave from outside, rapidly being swallowed up by the dark. All right. Well, we head in and we're going to light our lantern. Boom. So we're going to set our timer at 10, underclock at 20. Good to go, good to go. The stairs east end abruptly in thin air. The room's southwest corner has a winding, nearly vertical passage downwards that lacks stairs or handholds. So it's this entryway. So you can kind of see, yeah, eastward, set of stairs that looks more natural, or that looks more artificial. Southwest, more natural, steps down further into darkness. The northwest corner has a short, steep slope down. Dex 9+ to climb down unassisted or no check with rope. Only roll if time is an issue. Yeah, that's an important thing to tell new DMs, that not everything has to be a roll, even if there is theoretically a chance for failure or something like that. If the players are not under a time pressure, they can do a lot more safely than they would otherwise. So no, we carefully descend down into this cave. And we don't really notice much, but we do see plenty of bat guano, bat shit. And we see animal bones littering the floor. We're gonna tick down the underclock. Ooh, 9 points already. We just feel the dark oppression of this place. Okay, tick the light down. Every room, man, even though it technically hasn't been 10 minutes. But, you know, we did take a little bit of time to going down the incline there on the way in and stuff, and we're going very cautiously. We know that dangers can be around every corner. So we can go east down the more artificial path, southwest down the more natural path. I think we're going to go the artificial way into what we assume is the tomb itself. So the drop to the east is Dex 12+ to climb safely. 1d4 falling damage if failed by 5 or more. On failure, climbers land prone in area 2 and trigger the opal trap. No check with rope, but a roll is required otherwise. Drop is a near distance down. Near distance down, jeez. So probably like 12 feet or something. Down to here. Or something like that, I'm not quite sure. This goes this way, then down this way. And then this room goes stairs this way. So I'm not quite sure where the drop-off is. But I would imagine it's actually right here. Down into this room. But wouldn't we be able to see a bit of room 2? I'm not sure. I feel like the intent is that you can't see into there, but then no, I think the intent is because if you fail by 5 or more, you fall into area 2 to the spongy floor and trigger the opal trap. So yes, I think that is the intent, and I think we would be able to see into the room before climbing down. So we'd see that the room there has an uneven flagstone floor. The ceiling is an elaborate mural of a giant stone elemental destroying a city. Raised spike in the center of the room holds a glittering pearlescent egg, and a scaly greenish figure is curled up against the north wall. That's pretty much what we see. So it's no check with a rope. But what the fuck would we attach a rope to here? I guess someone could just hold the rope. Our biggest, strongest dude could hold the rope. And then at the end, jump down himself. So probably Junor, because he's got good dex as well. Oh no, Malcor has a fucking 17 dex. All right. So Malcor will hold the rope as the others descend. So he is, he's fine. So the opal trap is the egg-sized opal on top of the spike. Blasts beams of frigid energy at creatures nearby, but stops once dislodged from the spike. So I don't think that'll trigger as soon as we step down. But it could. I mean, I guess it could. The first person to go down immediately triggers the opal trap. And then they either have to, like, scramble back up the rope or somehow deal with that shit. I suppose that's fair, right? So Junor will be the first one down because he's got the great axe. So yeah, no, and probably Malcor could use the others' help to, like, hold the rope while he goes down. So Junor gets down to the bottom, finds that the flagstone floor is kind of spongy, which is a really weird way to describe it, but it's got, like, some give to it, which is also really concerning. Any of those things that I would say to players would really set them off. But before you can really contemplate that, the opal on top of this spike lights up, fills the room with light, and starts firing beam of ice at Junor. I gotta roll the underclock again, though. 3 more. We're down to 8. And light at 8. Alright, so it's a +1 versus his AC, I imagine, for 1d6 damage. So it rolls a 4, so it lights up and Junor manages to, like, dive out of the way, avoiding the beam of ice. But now we have to actually go into combat rounds, because we have to decide what we're doing. So we're going to roll a d6. But now we have massive dex mods. I mean, Oscar has a 18 dex. Am I really going to add +4 to this? See, I don't know if that system works as well with insane dex mods like that. I think individually it probably works, although, yeah, it just so happens that my entire team has absurd dex because I valued it very high. Because why wouldn't you? But now that means we're, like, always going to go quickly unless I do d20 rolls, and then it's not really as impactful. So now I rethink that. It was fine when everyone had his +0 dex, but now it's like, oh god, we'd all guaranteed to go first practically every round. So I guess let's just do a d20 still. +4. We rolled a crit, so it doesn't matter. That thing rolled a 1. Great. It's just, yeah, okay, great. Alright, so we all have a turn here. Would we think to immediately attack the eye? Probably, to be honest. But I can't really use any spells against it or anything, so we'd have to just attack it from range. So Godfrey will shoot a crossbow at it. And it's pretty simple. It's got 10 AC, 1 HP, so I imagine this is not going to be tough. Okay, critically fails. I don't think there's really any fumble penalty here, though. He's not in melee, and he's not shooting into melee or anything. There doesn't really make much sense. I could break his crossbow, but that's just dickish. So, yeah, nothing. Malgor, however, is going to throw his hand axe at it. 19-6. That is a hit, so he tosses the hand axe and it smashes the opal. It's worth 40 gold, but only 20 if you strike it for 5+ damage while dislodging it. He certainly did. So we put a big giant crack in it. Definitely not worth as much. But hey, it didn't blast anybody with ice, so that's good. Also, I think you probably want to describe the kobold corpse a little bit more closely before they drop down. If they see that it's frost burnt and shriveled, like it got blasted with something, they're going to be a lot more wary, and it gives them potential information. I think, you know, they'd probably already be a little wary, but that's a little bit more information. Alright, so, yeah, Malkor is going to add treasure. Cracked opal. 20 gold. Treasure is treasure. And that is XP, actually, I think. I'm not going to give XP for cracking the opal itself, but I will give an XP for obtaining it. So everybody gets an XP. Alright, our first XP towards level 2. Very exciting. So then the other two are going to go down afterwards, and followed finally by Malkor, who's going to try to just drop down. So he needs a 12 or higher on this roll. He failed. So he slips. He doesn't estimate the fall correctly. And he did not fail by 5+. So he lands prone, but the spongy floor is pretty soft. So had he rolled a 7 instead of an 8, he would have taken 1d4 damage. But otherwise, it's an inconsequential failure for the most part. Unless you want to count it as making noise. Tempting. Tempting. That is a, you know, it's a wham against a stone floor. It kind of reverberates around the cave. I am going to roll the underclock for that. 6 and 5. Holy shit, we triggered it from that. Okay, back to 20, and we're going to roll one of these random encounters we got. 5. Both the ghouls from Area 5 ambush the group. It seems like the worst possible result we could have gotten. Alright, here are 2 ghouls that are going to now, you know, try and capitalize on the fact that this guy just, landed on his ass. And they're, like, trying to recover from, well, you know, we're a little scattered. It's definitely a surprise. So it's going to be an ambush. Now, do I actually want to make this an actual ambush? As in, we are surprised, and they get a free turn against us. That's pretty devastating. Honestly, it's very likely to lead to a TPK. But I don't know. Probably. This is again where axe rules and like, you know, what is, hold on. Yeah. So, I mean, OSC is the same thing. It's a 1d6, a 1 or a 2 is your surprise. Shadowdark does not follow that and just says that if one group has reason to be surprised, then they're surprised, and that's the end of it. The GM determines. So honestly, Shadowdark's rules are kind of a bit harsher, but also much nicer to players. Because players then can kind of always guarantee a surprise, whereas in like BX, it's Pretty slim chance, actually. So if I'm going to follow Shadowdark rules, which I typically do when players want to surprise something, then I guess the ghouls are just going to surprise us. So they're both going to rush out. Now they get a +2 on their claw attack. One of them's going to be towards Malcor, who fell on the ground. And then I guess I'll be nice and we'll target the other one on Junor. So the first one against Junor is a critical fumble. Critical fail against Malcor. It's a 17, which is just barely a hit for 1 damage. Alright. But you have to make a DC 12 con check or become paralyzed for 1d4 rounds. We're going to roll this. He did fail, so he is paralyzed for 2 whole rounds. And now combat is initiated. So Oscar will roll his dex for us. 14 versus their 20. They're going to go right away again. I'm going to do something I don't normally do, and that's kind of continue to target a specific character. So they're both going to do the same rolls. So against Junor, that is a hit. And against Malcor, that is a hit. Junor takes 4 damage. These ghouls really just ravaging. Malcor takes 5 damage and goes down. This might be the end of Malcor already. We have no heals. And then Junor has to make his con check. He fails as well. He's paralyzed for 2 rounds. This might be a TPK from these ghouls, man. The others might want to flee, but they can't really flee because they can't climb back up. They didn't secure a rope or anything. They'd have to run further into the tomb. But maybe we can just win. Maybe we can just win. Now, they are humanoids, right? They're level 2, so maybe I could charm one. But they're undead, immune to morale checks, so probably not. Because I don't think we'd allow this to work on a skeleton. That's not really the intent. I think they have to have kind of a functioning brain. I don't think that's going to work. But we could hypnotize one. So Oscar's going to hypnotize one of them. Cast. Normal. Failure. No luck. So, fuck. This might be a TPK. Godfrey does not have any spell that's going to matter here. He could pull out Divine Armament, but I think he'd rather fire at one with his crossbow. And he missed. Okay. New round. This is very bad. This couldn't have gone worse, actually. He rolled a 15. They rolled out of 15, an 8. So we get to go again. Junor has like 1 round now. No. Yeah, Junor has 1 round on paralysis. We have to roll for Malcor. Okay, he's good for a while, thankfully. Oscar has practically nothing he can do except for eye bites, so we will eye bite one of them. Alright, success for 2 damage. They each have 11 health, so this isn't good. Godfrey will shoot the same one with a crossbow. Miss. Boy, oh boy, man. Abysmal rolls. And that's our whole turn, so now they're going to go. One's going to keep attacking Junor, who technically should have, like, touch AC at this point. You know, he should be flat-footed, but doesn't keep track of all that. So it's just a hit. He is down as well. Okay, and then the other one's going to go after Godfrey. Ugh. This was destined to be a TPK. 5 damage, he's at 1. He rolls his con check. Barely manages to make it, okay. New round. We got an 8 versus their 18, so they go first again. One's going to attack Godfrey. Rolls a 13, which is a miss, thankfully. And the other one will attack Oscar. 12, that's a miss, thankfully. We get to go. The one that couldn't see Oscar attacked Oscar. But Oscar's going to keep trying to pile onto that other one that has 9 health. Success for 2 more damage. That's 7 health. Godfrey is in melee, but there's no penalty to shooting in melee with a ranged weapon in Shadowdark. So he's just going to go with the crossbow again. Miss. Okay. Junor has 3 rounds, so they both technically have like 2 or 3 rounds. I'm not quite sure. This is almost certainly a TPK. New round. Oscar Dex roll 17 versus their 12. He's going to roll eye bite again on the same one. Success. Perfect for 2 more damage. We're getting there. He's down to 5 now. Godfrey, come on. Hit for 3 damage. It's down to 2 health. That's pretty good. Maybe make a morale check for him. He's near death. Oh, there are ghouls. They're immune to morale checks. Of course they are. They will fight until they can fight no longer. So one is going to attack Godfrey. That's a hit. So Godfrey's down. There's no question about it. And Oscar, that is a hit as well because he has 14 AC. 3 damage. He's at 1 health. Rolls his con check. He succeeds. New round. I don't even know what he can possibly do. He got a 12 versus their 18, so irrelevant. Only one of them can actually attack him, but obviously the other one will start feasting on Malcor or something. He rolls a 1, so Oscar does have a turn here to do something, but I guess he could run further into the dungeon. He does have the light. But he'd have to go, yeah, all the way through the whole dungeon and get back out. I suppose he will, because why wouldn't he, to try and survive? He sees this passage here, he's just going to start running from the ghouls. So let's see here. He's going to run through 5 and 3 before getting... So, there's a human scout there, but she'll probably just stay behind cover because she doesn't want to die. And then 5 has the ghouls, but they're obviously in this other room. I think that's it. So I don't think there's actually any... There's only 2 really dangerous things here. The ghouls. There's also tomb rats in room number 4, which are way less dangerous. So really, he's not going to encounter anything hostile. It's more just about like the dex checks to climb and stuff. So let's have him roll a dex to see how well he runs away from the ghouls. Okay, he rolled pretty well for that. And then another dex check to see if he can climb up that incline without falling back down and cracking his skull. 11. That, I think, is not going to do it. It's a dex 15. He failed by 4. Okay, so he doesn't fall, thankfully. He doesn't crack his skull, but he's just like, you know, he slips a little bit. He's struggling. He's desperate. He's terrified. This wasn't the life. And then he critically fumbles. So he slips, tumbles, cracks his skull, and dies. Okay, there you have it. So despite all my shit, despite all my little house rules to make the game, you know, more customizable, less brutal, You know, all our characters had a lot of health and things like that. All our stats were pretty stacked. You know, all these dex numbers, this high AC, all that shit didn't mean a damn thing. Because I happened to roll fucking worst possible encounter. And we rolled really heftily on the underclock. And we got surprised. Which was really sort of a big thing. That Malkor just immediately went down. Didn't have a chance to swing. Junor never got a chance to swing. So we got surprised, and then we lost the initiative. Terrible, man. Absolutely terrible. Really, yeah. Bums you out. Because it's like, what could I have done? What could I have done, I guess, is the question. What could I have done to prevent this situation from occurring? Because a lot of this was just like, well, the DM really rolled not in your favor. I rolled the most brutal random encounter, which involves surprise. I didn't give them a surprise check because that's Shadowdark rules, you know, and this is written for Shadowdark, so I imagine that was the whole intent of that. And then you lost the initiative. You failed some con checks, and the ghouls rolled really well, and you just got butchered. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I could have done differently. I mean, the player in charge of Malkor, honestly, what could he have done differently? I mean, yeah, like, maybe we should have actually secured the rope to something so that he could have climbed down normally. I guess. Maybe. But that's pretty minor. That's pretty minor. And then so, you know, he fell. He got ambushed. He got paralyzed. He lost initiative, and then he died. That was it. There was no agency there whatsoever. So I don't know if I can really blame the adventure or anything. But I do think that is a particularly brutal encounter. That is a particularly brutal random chance event that can occur. Assuming you just roll that as surprise with no save, or it's just surprise. Yeah, I mean, I know this is an OSR game and all that is meant to be pretty brutal, but shit. I don't know how I could have, like, forewarned players of that or anything, or tried to prevent it in any way. Ghouls rush out, you die. Yeah, I mean, again, like, Godfrey and Oscar could have both ran away, I suppose. Possibly would have been something you could do. But Malkor and Junor were just dead. They just didn't have a chance to do anything. Turn Undead, I suppose, would have been the answer. Had I actually had Turn Undead, we could have possibly used it to turn away the ghouls. And that probably would have saved everyone's life. So perhaps my house rules actually made this more difficult for me. Yeah, his Turn Undead. If they failed their charisma check against my spellcasting check, they would flee for 5 rounds. That would have easily solved that encounter. But you could very easily not have a priest with you, so that's not an answer. It's not really an answer. Damn. Okay, well, that's it. That's kind of really a bummer, because you get out of the funnel, you have your 4 characters, and you're like, yeah, all right, we're level 1 now, we're adventurers, and you go into your first little dungeon after that, and it just slaughter, dead. It's like, well, make new characters, I guess. I mean, if you still had characters from the funnel, maybe, but that's not really the point. The point is the ones that made it out, the primary group, you know, they level up. So I think at this point you'd probably just make new level 1 characters. And I guess we'll do that next time. We'll have them come out of Bailey Thorpe for whatever reason. And maybe we'll come back to this tomb because we can find... I mean, that was a lot of gold we left there on that tomb floor. You know, so maybe we'll also follow up with this tomb with some new characters. But yeah, that was rough, man. All right, but anyways, for now, my name is Mang. This has been Solo Roll Manging Shadowdark. I'll see you fine folks in the next part.